Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is Twist Gaming, where you get to play board games with us. We are coming to you live here from Gen Con 2019, bringing you all the board game coverage all week long. As usual, I'm your host, Matt, and right now I'm joined with Justin from Stoneblade Entertainment.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
So I heard I saw some good news on Facebook this morning.
Yes.
So why don't you let's start out with that.
Yeah, so as many people may know, we released the deck building game Shards of Infinity last year. It was a big hit. We released an expansion called Relics of the Future, which had a couple extra cards and some cool new mechanics. And then we just previewed here the newest expansion and the most ambitious expansion, Shadow of Salvation, and it sold out in minutes this morning. So
day two. And it's
day
sold
two,
out,
and it's
right?
already gone, and we won't be able to get more for till like late September. So
sorry, everyone.
I
that
apologize.
Didn't make it over there.
I apologize, but I literally stole this copy off the demo table because I didn't even keep one for myself.
That's awesome.
So this is the only copy that we still have, and I brought it here to share with you and share with your audience and talk
thank
about
you.
all the cool, awesome things that are happening. And really, like this was, yeah. I can get into it, but the process of making this was really revolutionary for us as a team because just to go back a little bit, so obviously I started with deck building games with Ascension, which has been a big success, and we've got our pirate set that released a month ago, and as you know, our 15th expansion, and we're gonna have our 10th anniversary next year. So I've been doing Ascension forever, and I love
lots
it.
of stuff going on.
It's
with
a
that.
lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but. Charge of Infinity was my reimagining of that world and reimagining of what I would do with a deck building game starting from scratch. You know, really building it with everything I've learned over the last decade. And so it's very fast. It's very aggressive. It's player versus player. We're all attacking, and it's got that kind of tight play cycle. Plays in 15 minutes. But with Shadow of Salvation, not only did I add more stuff to that, so we have just the basics are we added a new starting character, which is Rez. He's our time-traveling hero from the future. He's awesome, and he comes with his own relics. So for those that have the expansion Relics of the Future, each hero gets their own custom relics. And I tried to solve the problem of, unique starting positions in games often have the design challenge of either railroad you into one play strategy or they're super imbalanced, and it's it's very, very hard to balance. And so the way I solved that was to have the relics that show up when you get to 10 mastery. So the main mechanic of Shards of Infinity is that you have a mastery track that you can increase, and then all your cards get more powerful over time. And so when you get to 10 mastery, you get to pick one of the two relics. It's called Relics of the Future. So you sort of see your future paths, and you pick the one that you want. And each one allows you to enable a different strategy, so you don't get locked in up front. And as
you
the
still
game
get a
develops.
choice.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
That's really cool.
And then they, of course, also have a 20 mastery threshold power that makes them like super awesome and insane. So as the game goes on, you can do all the cool
They scale.
They scale over time, so they don't disrupt the game up front, and you have to invest in leveling up basically if you want to get the superpower out of
But
these
they
things.
don't feel irrelevant at the end of the game.
Exactly. And so that was like we got a great reaction to that, and so then we added new character, new relics. He also comes with his own new faction. As I mentioned, he's a time traveler, so his faction has the new ability Warp, which lets you fast play cards out of the center row. As you know, in deck building games, you're typically going to be able to acquire cards, add them to your deck, and you have to wait till you draw them to use them. Fast playing lets you get the effect immediately, and they disappear after that, so they can do cool stuff. And
It's
it's got
very aggro.
yeah, exactly. And well, the theme is that he's a time traveler, so he has these robot dogs, and he can warp things in and out of time. And so he has actually a variety of like 3 different of basically the same dog he has over and over again, because he takes them
puppies.
from different timelines, and it's really cool.
Nice.
So I talk a little bit more about the story than I usually do because the story is something that we're most excited about, because in addition to this adding another character and new cards to the game, if you love Shards as it plays, you get more cool stuff. There's now a cooperative campaign mode to play.
Oh, really?
So we've completely upended the apple cart and everything. And it comes, Shadow of Salvation comes with this battle book. The battle book has, not only does it has a sort of choose your own adventure story and different bosses and encounters that you're going to have. And each one has their own specific mechanics. They level up on their own. I don't know how easy this is going to be to show there, but we can try it.
We'll make it
You
work.
see the cool characters. He
So-
has his own powers. And then as you defeat them, you get to level up your deck, your starting deck, and it improves permanently over time. And you can pick which boss you want to fight, and the path you choose changes the adventure as you go along.
Very cool. So I'm assuming it gets harder and harder as you
Oh
progress
yes,
through
it
the
gets
battle
much harder.
there.
So you get more powerful because you get better starting cards for each encounter, but the bosses get harder and harder. And we have like multiple difficulty modes too, because it's actually a tough thing because I hadn't really published a cooperative game before, so figuring out what the right difficulty level is. Like, I consider myself pretty good at balancing player versus player games, as I grew up as a, pro Magic player, and I've been developing these sort of deck building, battling games forever. But developing a cooperative game is a totally different beast because you have a lot of, how nasty can the villain be to you, right?
Right.
They can get away with a lot more than a player can, right? If I gave you as a player the ability to like knock out my entire hand of cards and do a bunch of damage to me with just one blow, you would quit. You would rage quit.
It's like, this isn't fair.
But with the boss, I could get away with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we make them feel really nasty and put a lot of really powerful, crazy effects that they can do. And each one forces you to change your play pattern. Like the standard style of like get as many efficient cards and find that one narrow path is now you have to change because the cards from the boss will force you to shift strategies. And you actually share a turn during the course of play. So the boss takes a turn and will deal cards out to everybody and attack you. Mm-hmm. And then the players get to take a turn and they have a shared turn where they can like decide which cards they want to buy. They can combine their power to take out some of the shadow champions, which I'll show you. This is one of my favorites with the art. This giant spider that's eating an elephant.
Jeez.
And so you can see they actually will have, like, when they show up, they attack you. That's that 4 power there. But if the boss's mastery gets higher, because the boss gains mastery just like you do, then those things will do 10 damage when they show up. So like the boss threat escalates over the course of play. So this is where like the mastery mechanic, again, which was sort of the major innovation of Shards, serves a great purpose of creating the story arc even within the boss campaigns and even within their powers.
So how many people cooperatively is that playing with?
Yeah, so the game typically is 2 to 4. You can support 5 players, although we don't give you a 5th starting deck, so we have to get one of those out there. We'll make it available eventually. But so it's usually 2 to 4 is what we recommend, and we'll enable a 5th player soon.
So do you find does the game scale differently based off the number of players? Because you're saying that you're all sharing a turn together. Does that mean that it's easier with more people? Or
Right. It's a great question. So the way it works, because the boss deals 1 card to each player, and the way that the cards are dealt out, they scale the boss's mastery.
Mm-hmm.
We actually balanced it reasonably well, where it actually it doesn't get easier with more players, as much as you think it might, because you can collaborate, and that is very powerful. And if you're all very good, then obviously you can like leverage that a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But the boss scales faster relative to the players, right? So if it's just 2 players versus the boss, the boss will only have 2 cards worth of mastery that they're gaining compared to every player turn. If it's 3 or 4 players, the boss has a higher percentage of cards. So their scaling happens faster than you do, which counterbalances the advantage of more players being able to collaborate.
Gotcha.
So that was, again, developing these things was really hard. It took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to when we started down this path, but it was really, really fun. And then we brought in, professional writer to do the story and to really I like creating awesome worlds. Like, it's one of the fun parts of the job, right? Like, so with Ascension, we have a decade of story. With Shards, we have all this story and all this backstory. But most players don't know it, right? Because we can only tell it to you with art and flavor text and like a little blurb at the start of the rulebook.
Right. So it's kind of interspersed all throughout
the
game.
It's there, and if you're a super fan, you can also go to our website. We have articles about the lore. Our email list on stoneblade.com, we send out like articles and backstory and cool like behind the scenes stuff. But unless you're super invested, you don't get to experience it.
Right.
With the battle book, we have a story that you are reading aloud to your playgroup, that you're actually talking through, and so you really get immersed in like, okay, Rez has traveled back from the future, and this horrible thing has happened, and you're trying to fix it, and you're like trying to tick these different timelines, and so it really helps to like immerse you in the world in a way that really none of my games have ever done before. And then we also added one more trick to do that, which is if you don't feel comfortable reading on your own to your group, we actually had a professional voice actor read through the entire campaign. We've made it available for free on our website, stoneblade.com/battlebook, and you can just click on the choices you make throughout the game, and it'll read the story stuff to you. So
that's
when
really
you pick up the
awesome.
game, you can check that stuff out right now, but please don't listen too far ahead.
Don't
You'll
spoil
it.
yourself.
Don't spoil yourself. But we made it free. We unlocked it for everybody because we wanted you to have the best possible experience. Being immersed, having the story. And so you have this campaign where you'll typically go through 3 encounters as you play, but there's a variety of different ones you can pick. So even though you have an evolving legacy-like campaign, the whole thing only takes like 2 hours, a little less depending upon how efficient your group is, or you can play one fight for like 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then and then you can reset and do it again and make different choices and go through the experience again. So we tried to make something that was like sort of modular, that if you want just a bite-sized thing, you can do that. If you want something that's exciting and longer and more epic scale, you can do that, and try to make it as replayable as any of the PvP games we make.
So, speaking of the replayability, you're saying there's different choices to make here. Do we have like a number of how many different like scenarios you can go through?
Yeah,
on
so
that,
there's 3 tiers of bosses, and each tier you can pick one of the 2 bosses that you're going to fight. And then within that, there's after each fight, you have a choice of which upgrades you want, which of the heroes you want to save that upgrade your deck. And there's 6 different ones out of a set of, I think, 20 or 30 that you get to select from. So the permutations there get pretty
Nice.
significant. And then,
So
of course,
the
because
replayability scale is very
yeah,
nice.
yeah, and because the boss decks are randomized, and we also have rules for you to. Each boss comes with their personal cards that have their special powers, and they get 2 monster groups, and there's 4 different monster groups. And we have rules if you're playing through you can combine the monster groups to make it even more variety. So
Gotcha.
there is like you will never run out of ways to play, basically,
Awesome.
with this system. So that was one of our major objectives. Is that one of the problems with a lot of the campaign games I've played is they're fun, but once you play through it, like, okay, I know I've done it, I know the story, I've been through it, I don't want to play anymore. And it's just like always for me in my DNA when I try to make games, like I don't want this to be a game that you just enjoy for 2 hours. I want it to be a game you enjoy for the rest of your life. So that's what we tried to do with this awesome new edition.
So talk to me as the player side of you here, going from the PvP games, going into these cooperative games, and like kind of like staying in the same universe,
Yeah.
and moving it to a cooperative feel. How does that feel to you? How does that like scratch a different itch, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question. The sort of main thing that pushed me into the gaming industry was professional Magic, right? I traveled around the world, I played in tournaments, and so that's always been a part of the thing I do, and every game that I made has been informed by that to some degree or another, like where it's that competitive instinct. But before that, I was a huge D&D player. I played role-playing games my whole life, and I love that sort of thing, but it never really got to express itself in my designs. And this was a real opportunity to try to like bring that out.
A more story-driven
more
element.
story-driven, more collaboration. We actually, really. We're usually a mechanics first kind of company where it's like really like get the gameplay where it's great and then figure out what story makes sense to get that there. And this one, it was very much a story first thing where it's like, how do we make this story work? What's going to be the awesome way to tell that? And then we build mechanics around that. And then of course they both inform each other and evolve over
Absolutely.
time.
That brings up an interesting point, though. So, how is that for you on the game design side to go from I have a mechanism that I want to introduce into the game, going to someone hands you, or you come up with a story element, and you're just like, how do I make this work?
Yeah. So I've had some experience with that in the past when I've worked on licensed games. So I did the Versus System trading card game for many years. I designed that, the World of Warcraft miniatures game. And that's ones where you have an IP, you have a story already there for you, and you have to build a game that makes sense for that universe. Now, they're bigger intellectual properties, not a very specific story, so there are some differences here. But it's a fun challenge. In the best scenarios, it ends up inspiring cool new ideas that I never would have had before, right? Like, so one of the things that, for the, we have the Shadow Champions that are coming in and attacking you, and they're, we wanted to make them feel like nasty and personified, but then we realized that people were so scared of the Shadow Champions, and we had stories around like why each one belonged to each boss, that we had to sort of attack a cookie on them too, that we got XP whenever they got killed. You felt like you should get something, so you gain mastery every time you kill one of the Shadow Champions. And so that felt like more of that like adventure, like kind of
right. I'm gaining
dungeon
experience.
Right. And so that story of like you kill the monster, you get some XP, and fit into our universe in a way that like I wouldn't have thought of naturally, but then because it was part of the story, it like ended up being a great gameplay mechanic. So those are like the best case scenarios. And then there's other times where you're like, oh man, this game would be super cool, but it just doesn't make any sense in the story at all.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one other of the positive ones is because we had the story that Rez is a time traveler. He's coming from the future to like undo the damage that's been done in his timelines, and we made the story so that he's actually done this multiple times and failed multiple times. That's why when you're going through, he keeps going back to try again and again, and that's where he sort of gets your shard masters, which is the players, to work together, because he's tried to work with each one of us individually and it just doesn't work. We have to work together to do this, even though we all have been trying to kill each other for the last 2 expansions. But one of the cool things about time travel is we made it so that we weren't sure how to land the difficulty level of the game. As we sort of talked about, it's very hard. Like, if the game's too easy, then you breeze through it and you don't want to play anymore. If the game's too hard, you just keep losing, and that's not fun.
And then there's definitely different experience levels when it comes to cooperative games or players as well.
So since we had a time traveler hero, what we did was if you lose a fight, Rez will take you back in time to the beginning of that fight with new experience, so you'll actually get an extra card for your deck that he'll take with you, so you can go back and fight it better prepared.
That's really awesome, just because it's not just, okay, try again at an easier difficulty. You actually made a story element that lines up with that. That's actually really, really cool.
Right, so we felt like that gave us a little bit more freedom to like push the challenge level a little bit and make it harder, because look, if you can't make it there, then Rez is going to take you back in time and you'll have more tools to fight, and you can go back and re-challenge that boss, or take a different path and try the other boss.
So do you start off on the highest difficulty then?
I personally, or
Well,
do I
mean,
recommend?
Is that the choice?
No,
in the
I have
game?
a we have a in the rule book, we have there's a base, normal difficulty mode, and there's a novice mode, and then there's the super hard mode we put at the end. There is a hard mode that like we mostly lose all the time.
Expert mode.
It is so I actually recommend most people start with the novice mode the very first time you play. And it's really the difference in between novice mode and normal mode is the boss. Players go first, or the boss goes first.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference of the boss getting one extra turn on you is gigantic.
Really?
Like, it's amazing how much that's why when I talked earlier about the balance between number of players, the boss being able to escalate faster, because again we ramp up the challenge based on the mastery level of the boss pretty dramatically. It turns a corner, because this is the other problem with deck building games. We're deep diving into some design stuff here, but I geek out on this. Deck building games naturally have an exponential growth curve, right? Like as you get more powerful, it becomes easier to get more powerful, and so on and so on and so on. And
so it becomes kind of crazy pants at the end.
Right,
there,
exactly.
yeah.
So if you let a game go on too long, the players are just become gods.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. They can do whatever they want. And so the way to combat that was we had to make the bosses become gods too, basically. So they have you on a clock that you can't just mess around and waste your time making your deck as cool as it can be. You
because
have
they're
to,
scaling up.
because
with
they're
you.
scaling
Yeah.
scaling up with you. And so that was sort of a really interesting design challenge that we had. The mastery mechanic helped us solve, but it forces the game to be very intense, very high action, which was one of the charms of Shards of Infinity in the first place, was that it's a very fast, very like high impact, very high scalar kind of game compared to other deck building games. And so we wanted to keep that emotional intensity in the team game, but add that cooperative element where I can heal you and we can share, and I can help you kill the monster that's in front of you, and you can buy the card that I wanted, and blah blah blah.
So more cooperative stuff coming down the pipeline for Shards of Infinity?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. We have hidden a link inside of this battle book. When you get to the end of the battle book, you can go to our website, to that special link. You can enter what happened in the course of your play, and then you can make the choice of what happens next. And we have actually delayed. We have not started the next Shards of Infinity expansion. Usually we're well out front by the time it happens. We have purposefully waited to see what fans say. And so when based on the choices that you make, will make a decision of which characters and things show up in the next expansion. Whether that expansion is you decide you want to cooperate and try to collaborate to make the world a better place. Do you want to turn and betray your other players and go after each other, or do you want to? We even give you the option to. Well, I'm not going to spoil it. There's other options that this can go, and so we have multiple game mechanics designed that are kind of ready to be developed based on what players actually do in the story. So we wanted this story to not just be a better story that we're telling you. We wanted it to be a story that you become involved in, and you get to tell us.
Oh, that's so awesome that you're kind of crowdsourcing the way that the story's going, and then kind of like continue, not just making this is the next cooperative thing that's happening, but leading out of this story into that as well.
Well, and I'll tell you one more thing too, because this is not unlike in Ascension, where like we not only like when I first made Ascension, I had 3 years of story arc planned, and I was like, that's plenty, no worries. And in fact, it's now almost year 10, and we had to make more stuff, and we continue to do that. And it's cool, and we've done a lot of great stuff there. But with Shards, I'm not doing that. We are doing one more expansion, and that's it.
Oh, really?
So the story that everybody decides how this arc is going to end is going to be the end. We're going to release that next expansion. We'll do a kind of ultimate edition with everything in it, and then we're leaving this universe. We're moving to something else.
Ooh,
so
okay.
it's a bold choice, which is hard to hold to when you've got a successful game.
Yeah.
But I want to make something that's awesome and complete and is what the fans want, and then we will evolve from there.
Well, it lets you go on to something fresh too,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
maybe like shake up what you're doing, and then
Yeah, like I keep pretty busy, and the idea of like having to make both like 2 Ascension sets a year and 2 Shard sets a year and my new games and this other stuff, and I'm working on Bachman and I'm doing the podcast. It's like I can't keep doing everything. I want to do new stuff, and this will be a great complete thing when we're done, and our fans now have the opportunity to help dictate how that's going to go.
So you mentioned the podcast a little bit here. Let's just jump into that.
Sure. So I last year I released my book called Think Like a Game Designer. I've been very fortunate to be able to do what I do, and I had to learn the hard way a lot of lessons about how to become a game designer, how to do the craft, how to get the job, how to get jobs, how to get published, all that stuff. And so I wrote a book to help people learn that. And then I started a podcast in February, which is basically me talking to other awesome designers and talking about the craft and how it works. So I've talked with Mike Selinker and Paul Peterson and Jordan Weissman and a bunch of like really great like legendary designers, and we just deep dive into like the cool stuff about design and how they got into the industry and what they would do if they were starting over today, and how we kind of like theory craft through different game design problems.
That's always cool, going through these people that have been doing it for quite some time and then letting like a retrospective of what have you learned up until this point, because it's crazy like the amount of stuff that you pick up just year to year going through this, and you get that nugget of information that just becomes more and more polished, throughout the years, and it becomes like a gem.
Yeah, exactly. And I partially do this because like there's this a lot of people out there that want to make their own games, and it's awesome, but there are some key lessons that echo. Every single designer has these same lessons, and then we have different paths too, but being able to sort of put yourself out there, being able to add value to the community, learning how to do iterative design, being able to cut from, the things that you think you need when you actually really want to focus on the core mechanics.
Right.
And so we just sort of reinforce those lessons, and it's been great for me because I've been having these conversations with a lot of these guys just kind of over drinks at the bar here or after the show, but to be able to have it in this podcast format where we can share with everybody and where I can ask some more probing questions than is like normal in a regular conversation, it has been great. And so we just put that up for free, and I think there's 6 or 7 episodes that are up now, and we've got a bunch more coming. So it's sort of my way to kind of give back to the community and help other people make more awesome games that I get to play.
So where can our viewers go to find out some information about that podcast?
Yeah, so thinklikeagamedesigner.com has all the information. There's also, it's on iTunes and Stitcher and all of the sort of normal podcast platforms. You can just search for Think Like a Game Designer, and it will be available. We also post every time we do something new, and I do actually other design articles on our newsletter, which is stoneblade.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. Send out something about once a week with some cool behind-the-scenes stuff, design thoughts, promos, discounts, all kinds of cool stuff.
Awesome. And then Shards of Infinity,
Shadow of Salvation.
Shadow of Salvation.
Yes.
Not available anymore at Gen
You
Con.
cannot get it. You can see this version. That's the only one you can see. We'll be doing pre-orders on our website in I think a week or two, and then it will be launching in late September. I don't have the exact date, but late September, everybody will be able to get their hands on it. And if you get a chance, play it and get me go through to that secret channel and figure out what you want by the end of November, because that's when we're going to take the accounting of player feedback and start the next thing.
Fantastic. And so, Justin, where can our viewers go to find out more information about everything that you're working on?
All the things. I have so many things. So, as I mentioned, the newsletter, stoneblade.com, signing up for the email list is the best thing. We have Stoneblade on Facebook. We're on Instagram. On Twitter, you can find me personally at Justin_Gary. I'm always happy to chat with people. If you have questions about our games, about making your own games, about getting involved and connected, it's my privilege to be a part of this community, and I love, that's actually the reason why I come to Gen Cons. I get to hang out with fans and talk to people. And so anytime you want to reach out to me on the interwebs, please do.
On the interwebs. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure,
really
as always.
It. And thank all of you for watching at home. We're going to be taking a brief intermission right now. We'll be back in just a few moments with more coverage from Gen Con 2019. Signing off for now, though, I'm Matt. Have a good one, everyone.